All right, how about this? I was going to give practical around-the-house tips. That is, especially for those of you who now consider that your proper place of residence is in a new area within your skull. If that be true, then you may take this. It has to do with starting off talking about ordinary affairs. You see, when you're dealing with sequential affairs, when you're dealing with linear thought, no matter how routine it is to try always and still be expansive yourself. Now, this has nothing really to do with trying to run your life better, for those of you getting this on tape. Now, if I describe it much more crudely, which I'm about to, it is not unexpected at all that it will strike you as, well, all this is having to do with someone trying to live life more efficiently, trying to look after their own affairs in a more profitable way. Yeah. But that's not the point. That is secondary, to say the very least. And if nothing else, if I could try and deflect your attention to begin with, I would have to say this, although this is not literally and confiningly true, is to say to use what I was going to try and describe, it should be on the basis that it is useless. That there is no real ordinary point to it. But it goes like this. It's not unusual at all. It's trying to continually foresee the kinds of consequences, the possible sequential consequences of what you're about to do. Or the kind of linear connections between what you may be thinking about doing. Now, I'm talking about ordinary affairs now, of just what you're going to do. In times past, you have heard it described in ways such as a kind of attempted inner omnivision, a kind of continually sweeping searchlight. And I see it not used, which is not my point to make you people feel bad, even if I could. But you should realize that there is a place, even at the old building site, that is in just ordinary affairs, of you trying to run your life, of going to the store, getting up, doing whatever your duties are in the morning, whatever it is. And of course, when you get outside the routine habit, the daily habit, such as things maybe I just mentioned, but into doing something a little unusual, telling someone to meet you at a certain time. I repeat, forget the practical aspects of it, that it might make life work more efficiently, it might make people have more confidence in you. Forget all that. That is just what I meant by a secondary aspect. It's not that that would not be correct, but that is not the point. The point should be, in a kind of subversive way, that it would make you very, very, in a revolutionary sense, upset. Of course, even this is a different kind of upset because the upset has no purpose. Not any known purpose. But it's to be upset that you did something. You told somebody, meet me so-and-so, and then it had other ramifications, that you didn't get there on time, and then there was going to be another plan about what was going to happen when you got there, and that you had some knowledge that they were going to have to change their plans to be there because you were familiar enough with the person. And so you understood, once it was pointed out, let us say that you did not show up on time, and the person says, it's bad enough you didn't show up, but you realize that every day at this time I normally do so-and-so, and you went, whether you said or not, you went, yeah, I knew that. It's not to please them. It's not to get yourself off the hook, and it's not to make other people be impressed with your powers of intellectual wherewithal. It should make you mad in a certain kind of way if it does strike you, if it strikes you in any way that you must defend your lack of sight. Forget right or wrong, forget any sense of morality, forget any sense of dependability, forget any sense of it being in any way a pragmatic affair. If it's in any sense that you do something, that you plan to do something, you attempt to do something, and that circumstances are such that the energy runs into you at some time, and you have, right before your very own little internal eyes, the immediate pressing need to say, well, all right, let me tell you. That should be, I suggest to you, possibly the most offensive words that a real revolutionist could say to themselves. But for no other purpose than they are. Not to suit someone else's purposes. But any time that you feel your own brain going, okay, some of you didn't know that brains can gesture, and they go, and you go, yeah, I hear what's coming. And it's a brain, it's a first story brain. It's a brain first story instead of just lies. Because you're about to say, well, hey, look. Anytime that you feel your own brain about to say, well, hey, look. You should find that, I suggest, offensive. Really offensive. Unacceptable. But let me note for a third time. For no particular reason. It does have a reason, but for no known reason. No three-dimensional, ordinary reason. There is a method that is not unrelated, and it is very ill-named. So what? It's a secret method. It may be secret because it's so ill-named. And I cannot make any gestures to you and explain away the ill-naming of it because I ill-named it. But let us call it thinking backwards. And as I was hoping, need I say more? All right, the next, should I say more? I hate to. What if I told the truth from one view and said, well, I hate to because I don't know what to say about it? Better not let that go out on tape. Some people might find that offensive. Thinking backwards as a method. Well, even though I am not particularly driven to talk about it a lot, I guess I have to point out the obvious. It's not actually three-dimensionally thinking backwards. I bet somebody guessed I was going to say that, whether you guessed that or not. I bet you guessed that I would say that. How about even an example? I bet some of you guessed I'd go ahead and give an example. The good old idea of which we were discussing the last time we were taping of cause and effect. Thinking backwards about cause and effect would not be then thinking about effect and cause. And yet by any reasonable initial consideration of what I said, that kind of example, the thinking backwards about cause and effect, surely the starting place would be, whether it made any sense immediately or not, would be to say, well, after you'd be thinking about it, you'd turn it backwards and think about it in a backwards way, going from cause to effect, or take the whole idea of cause and effect and make it effect and cause. That is not thinking backwards. If that was thinking backwards, people could do that. And if they could do that, it would amount to naught. Let me at least suggest this, something that you heard in the last few weeks. How about a kind of, and it's still not linearly limited to this, but that if something is going on inside your own nervous system, inside of your own brain, and you can take those kinds of thoughts and turn them on themselves as not simply in the opposite direction, but you can turn them on themselves in such a way. You remember the examples that I brought up, such as the question, pro and con of capital punishment, abortion, etc. But that you can turn the ideas on themselves to where they self and mutually self-destruct, leaving something new. And it's not either one of the two. Because if it was either one of the two, then thinking backwards would be as crude as I said it was not. That is, it's not simply the thing turned backwards. I believe I should stay here for a second because it was about to get worse. I was going to hit and change it to even a higher level of this. If it was simply thinking backwards, if it was simply thinking contrarily, then probably everybody has either an uncle or a great uncle named Hubert or Floyd that disagreed with everything. Didn't you ever have some uncle like that, no matter what you said? Of course, did Uncle Floyd turn out to be some kind of world-famous guru? Did he even have enough sense to come out of the rain without drowning? Of course, he's probably the kind to say, Rain don't kill people. Guns do. Well, I didn't say that. It is not simply a naysaying of whatever is said. But what if internally there was a way, and I do intend something behind the term, that you could think backwards, but at least start out with the firm concept, sane or not, that it is not simply thinking the opposite of what you're thinking. If it is, I'd say so. But it's thinking backwards. It's not taking the idea and taking the reverse, or I just said it was the reverse. Thinking backwards is something else. That is, your nervous system, the energy is flowing through you around about a certain subject, and you're thinking about it. Thinking backwards about it is not taking whatever life is making you think and thinking the opposite. It's not the opposite. It's taking the energy and trying to reverse it, to think about what's going on backwards. That's different from opposite. All right, there's even a higher level, an even more mal-labeled method, which got nowhere to shift the blame because I made this one up, and it's called thinking sideways. This one you have heard mentioned a few times, but I wanted to try and get a little more specific. And it is no less than the attempt to extract your publicly speaking voice from the center of what you say and what you think. And I was going ahead and get dirty with you and try and give some specific examples, which probably will cause some tittering. God knows we all hate that, but not a lot can be done when you're living in under democratic conditions, because people will titter. Perhaps someday we'll be civilized enough that it'll just come to a natural halt, but until then, at least try not to get any on the floor. Every time the ordinary intellect speaks, it is by some guise or the other speaking about local reality. That is its job. It is, even if it apparently is operating analytically in some way, it is operating analytically on the basis of studying man the individual, not the species. And it is by and large, always speaking about itself. Well, for example, I'll tell you the kind of problem I've had with alcohol. Now, I'll tell you the kind of problems I had with emotional problems before I became a psychiatrist. I'll tell you the kind of moral turpentine, that's turpitude, in which I used to waller before I became a priest or a preacher. It seems to be great stuff. It seems to be, there's the very heart of humanity. What better example could you have of what you understand than you? Right. That's why it's all so clear. But, sir, how do you know what you're talking about? Why are you so much against sin? I'm glad you asked me, son, because I personally, up until just recently, was a terrible person. What more could you want? If you're going to get a lecture on alcoholism, find the next drunk, right? If you're going to get a lecture on decency, find someone who was just immoral as they could be. Now, this sounds familiar. This does not sound like ordinary life. That if you want an expert's opinion, where do you go? By God, you go to an expert. Most of you have had 20 or 30, 40 years. You've been exposed to all kinds of experts, even when you didn't want to be. They pop up on your TV. They'll be back in your bushes if you don't watch it, unless you got an electric fence. And what good has it done? Thinking sideways is to extract yourself, from your publicly speaking self, from the center, and thus destroy even you thinking about local reality. And here comes some examples. But may I be so bold as to say that these are not parlor tricks, even though I still know, after trying to shame you, I bet you somebody's going to titter. I just know it. I was trying to do a dramatic pause here so that, as silly as it may sound when I give the example, that perhaps some of you will even say, wait a minute, there's more to that than the silliness. Instead of saying, I do not like opera or broccoli. Now this would be a reasonable statement. You're just standing around. Now remember, this serves no useful purpose. Do not worry about this serving some sort of psychological, remedial purpose. Perhaps it is too exotic, too esoteric to even imagine. Just consider it serves no purpose except for a subversive individual movement of a person here and there doing something like in the wormwood of their own mind. You're having a conversation, it comes up, you're civil, you're sociable, there's nothing particular going on, and they're talking about opera, and somebody's talking about is PBS still, is Texaco still sponsoring the Saturday Opera Live from the Met often? People talking about this and that, and have you heard a new version of so-and-so? Maybe it's sort of your turn, and you just say, well, I don't like opera. It's no big deal, except in a subversive way. Thinking sideways is to extract yourself from that, because it is a big deal. It keeps you locked into local reality. And I was going to tell you, try and describe the method, because it can be, I do think, for a few people here and there, a lot of fun. Not just the method, because it can uncover something having to do with the actual energy basis of the nervous system and the brain besides the words, beyond those descriptions. Instead of saying, I don't like opera. Don't just titter now. That you feel compelled to speak. You're about to speak, and let's say that you're getting good enough now that you can hear it coming, and you do not say, I don't like opera. You say, the face is turned to you, and it's sort of your turn to talk, and you say, I don't believe that opera would get its just appreciation based upon the little knowledge and experience I could bring to it. It's not just some little cute trick. I'm good mind just stop the tape and leave you with it. It is subversive for a few people, because you are not absolutely denying the energy that life is trying to send. It's not just through you. It's not that just as important that you stand up and say, I don't like opera. Or it's not important, there's not some kind of spiritual test going on that you're supposed to go, wait a minute. Opera might be actually the music of the gods. Or I shouldn't be so judgmental. I'll say, I like opera, when actually I hate it. It's none of that. The energy, and it's not just you, there is this whole, shall we say, little movable environment going on of you and this other crowd of this, in Medea's rays that we came in the middle of the little scene, and people standing around a little cocktail party, and they're talking about opera. Life is using this for some reason, as small as the purpose may be, as limited. But this kind of energy is going on. Somebody else is singing the praises of opera, and you could be standing there making kind of cocktail party, three-dimensional psychological judgments. Some guy over here is talking about how he faithfully listens to the opera, and you realize you see him almost every Saturday on the golf course, and you realize he's trying to play some kind of social climbing verbal game. He doesn't listen to opera. He's just running his mouth off. You might be making those kind of judgments that all of this has little to do with anything, and it still comes your turn. And life has this whole little thing generally arranged, generally wired up, because you've already been wired up. This is not the first time. It's just suddenly, or it is not that just suddenly you've decided, opera, I never thought about it. God, I hate that stuff. You'd had some reason to make some comment to yourself before about opera, that you accidentally got it on the channel when you were flipping through, and you went, ooh! So you're already aware of the fact that you do not like opera. But here it is, life has this scene going, and you do not try and in some way operate backwards, that is, in the opposite three-dimensional way of simply saying, I like opera, when you don't. None of that's relevant to a subversive. The use would be, I'm suggesting to you, is you do not, in a sense, surely you heard me, you are still saying that you don't like opera, more or less. I'm not going to stand here and tear words apart forever for no reason. But instead of you letting your public speaking voice say, I do not like opera, you all but extract you from it. Technically speaking, you're still expressing what you're saying. But you have almost extracted you from it. That now the heart of your response, see, if you say, I don't like opera, you're talking about I. You're talking about your own local reality. You're not talking about opera. Now, that's plain enough. But to do it the way I'm saying, you are in essence attempting to extract you from the center of local reality. You're almost extinguishing your public speaking voice. You cannot do it completely, technically, because you are still, even the way I put it to you, that if you said, they're still talking about opera, and they look at you, it's your turn, everybody's taking a sip, you've got to hold up your end of the conversation, and you say, opera would not get its just desserts, its proper appreciation, with the lack of experience and knowledge I could bring to it. You are then, for all intents and purposes, you are discussing opera. Almost you're concerned for opera. It would almost be a shame for someone like me to soil, to even interfere with what is surely the proper glory and respect, appreciation people have of opera. I couldn't bring anything worthwhile to opera. That you are stuck down at the tail end of the sentence. But still, the point being, you have apparently, as far as is technically possible with the human language, you have extracted almost you from the center of what you say. You are still publicly speaking. You are not trying to dam up life's energy flowing through you. The energy is coming through, and you are still expressing, in a sense, I don't like opera. But instead of you talking about you, now you're apparently talking about opera. Instead of you apparently saying, in essence, that your concern is over you, like, God, I hate opera. And what you're saying is, don't let me get around opera, don't torture me with that crap. That your concern is over your own welfare. But now it sounds as though your concern is over the welfare of opera itself. How about instead of threats, then? That there seems to be just cause for you to turn to someone, and what you're saying, in essence, you continue that, I'll kill you. How about instead of that, if you said, those actions, your actions, could prove to be costly to your health. Now, I don't mean with some degree of great sarcasm. I'm not trying to say that you're trying to follow some kind of Charles Bronson Hollywood. That you actually say it sans any sarcasm. It's almost as though you're concerned now, instead of I'll kill you, because that kind of concern is that you're beginning to annoy me, whatever it is. Or you're beginning to cost me, or you're beginning to threaten me, whatever it is. Your welfare still is, in that first case, you to say, you keep that up, I'm going to kill you. Instead of that kind of direct, get right to the point threat, it now sounds as though your concern is over the person. That may I say, those kind of actions I suggest to you could very quickly prove very costly to you, health-wise. Did I say that these were not verbal parlor tricks? If they were, it'd be some kind of psychological game. It has to do with the energy. But it has to do with something I'm not even going to attempt to describe that you have got to do to yourself. And it's not just in doing this overtly. It's in, those of you that can do it, is pursue, why in the hell would this be brought up? Why did some of you titter? Because it seems to be nothing on the surface of it, if you just thought about it from the old intellectual building site. Now, what kind of crap is this? Instead of telling somebody, I don't like broccoli, I'm going to take up for broccoli and say, well, broccoli is the kind of food I don't have enough broccoli has not been on my menu enough for me to have a real enlightened view. my taste is inadequate. I don't know. It sounds as though you are literally talking about some kind of concern for broccoli. Broccoli is the focus now. You still got to mumble, and somewhere the sentence, whether overtly or not, is going to bring in the fact that it's you talking, because they see your lips moving, and you're the one saying it. And so in a sense, you're always talking about you. It's always from some kind of apparent position of where you are. But to attempt to do this, when you begin to understand it, you are doing your damnedest to extract your public speaking voice, from an identifiable position. Not for any reason, not so people don't think that you're, wait a minute, if I say I don't like opera, people think he's not as sophisticated as we thought. It's got nothing to do with that. It's got nothing to do with what anybody thinks. It's got nothing to do with any known position. Contraire, it is to extract you from any identifiable position. Not for anybody else's benefit. And not for any three-dimensional benefit to you. If you're going to think more than is necessary, if you're going to try and continually think when you don't have to, you cannot have a known position, or you're not thinking more than you have to. You're at the same stomping grounds. You're at the same locale. I'll say it one more time, although it is not for anybody else's benefit, it's not to impress anybody, it's not to depress anybody, it's got nothing to do with anyone else, but it should be that if someone else, if you were attempting to do this and I jumped out of the bushes and said, that guy sure does talk funny. Every time it comes his time to talk, everything from opera to cauliflower, he gets his senses all twisted around. It's like he's trying to say something and it comes out. Have you ever noticed it's a little weird? And I could get many ordinary people, if you were going through this scenario, to go, now that you mention it, I wouldn't necessarily think you were nuts yet, but if I said, you realize he is in some way torturing the English language. Or, I mean, I can't say that he is misspeaking, and I can't say that the sentence is not academically acceptable, but it seems as though he takes an inordinate length of time, because what he just said, if I'm not mistaken, is he said that he didn't care for opera. I believe you're right. But you notice, I don't like operas, I don't know, 3 or 4 words there at the most, isn't it? Yeah. But you notice it took him like 45, maybe 72 seconds. And he went around a whole bunch of things about he was afraid that opera would not get its just desserts and the full appreciation from the likes of him or his taste or his experience or something. Isn't that a little weird? I just want you to understand. I just wanted to admit that you could get somebody temporarily, perhaps, if all of this scenario took place, that you could get someone to say, yeah, that is a little weird. It would not stop the world. They would not suddenly want to turn on you and attack you with stones or day-old bread. They just think, well, I don't know. A little weird, now that you mention it. The potency of it, the usefulness, is in yourself, and I'm trying to suggest even the usefulness is before and then even beyond doing it. Just on the basis of what in the world is going on. But you should be, to be a real revolutionist to yourself, to be able to think in a way that's not tied to cause and effect and the weight of the 3D world, is you should be struggling to extract you from the center of it. It's got nothing to do with some kind of sham attempt to be humble, to be a decent person. It's just barely in the same verbal universe as that kind of thing. It's just got nothing to do with it. What it has to do with, if you continue to speak from an identifiable position, and if you say, I don't like opera, then there's nothing else to say. Then if I jump out of the bushes at you and go, aha, then don't you go, wait, I know what you're going to say. See, we've already been through that. If you start defending yourself, it's an identifiable position. You have publicly staked out a position. And you cannot be subversive and have an identifiable position. Not for somebody else's benefit. Not to protect you from imagined slings and arrows and psychological and verbal attacks from other people. It's for yourself, because as long as life can continue to make you reaffirm a known position, you are locked into the automatic flow that's already flowing through you. You're going to stay at the same neural building site forever. There's no way to change. The idea of threats, by the way. Would anybody care to take that internally, very specifically? And if I said that the way to even approach what normal people think about trying to change is not to threaten directly like that. Such as, instead of offering broccoli, is someone to say, boy, I hate my drinking habits, or I hate my smoking habit. I hate it. I hate the way that I am too shy, too aggressive. That is the normal way. If you were talking to ordinary people about what does it take to change, if they were really hip and sophisticated, the kind of people that eat broccoli and listen to opera, they would probably say, well, the first thing to change is you have got to be motivated. What does that mean? Well, you got to want to change. You got to understand that many of the things you do, you shouldn't do. You should change. You should hate your bad habits. It's a matter of threatening. If you threaten a habit, if you try and turn your own nervous system, which everyone does from the Pope on up or down, and you threaten, you keep on spitting up blood on me, you cheap lungs, and I'll quit smoking. There you go. If my liver keeps swelling up like this and pounding, you just keep that up and I won't drink anymore. You'll be off on your own now. You keep acting shy around people and let people push you around. Let me tell you what. Where's a mirror? Let me tell you what. You're not ever going to amount to anything. And I'm sick of it. I'm sick of you. I'm sick of my poor self-image. I'm sick of my shyness. If indeed, for some reason, you wanted to change, would any of you consider that that might not be the way to do it? Or looked at withal, since everyone's had occasion on several times, I'm sure I'm safe saying that, to take such an approach at your own habits, to what degree of success did you meet? Did you experience? And of course the answer is, what's Latin for zero? Even if you stopped the habit, that was not the end of it. Right? There is no end to threats. There is no end to the kind of reality wherein someone is at the center of what they say / what they think. That cannot be changed. If you hate opera, we're going to have to get metaphorical. If you hate opera, you'll always hate opera. You got that? But you understand it's got nothing to do with opera. Period. All right? Cauliflower. If you hate it, you'll always hate it. Yeah. If you like to smoke, you'll always like to smoke. If you like to drink, if you like to be mad, you'll always like to be mad. That does not compute, does it? It cannot be true. It, of course, is not correct in a reasonable sense in the three-dimensional world, because that would stop all ordinary operations of humanity. That is, it would stop all cause and effect. Nothing would work, literally. No technology would work, but people would not work. At least in the higher end of the nervous system, you could still work on the basis then of being back, as they keep wanting to claim that we are 95% genetically twins of chimpanzees. I didn't say that. Does anybody notice, though? If you turn on those kind of PBS shows, 10 years ago it was like 90%, and it was 92%. I'm going to quit turning it on because now it's up to, last I heard, something like they're now convinced through up-to-date ways in which they can measure the DNA that it is 95% right down the line of us and chimpanzees. And then that voice over that's doing that leaves it kind of hanging there like, huh? And I'm sure that I'm with you. I agree with you. Who needs to turn on TV and made to feel worse than you felt to begin with? The thing about thinking in such a way as, I don't like opera, I don't like anger, I do not like bigoted people, I do not like whatever it is, you are speaking continually in such a way that local reality is it. There is no way out. None. Even at the ordinary level, if I must do this, but right quick, if somebody, apparently an ordinary person, for some reason accidentally heard some of this, went, wait a minute, that does have some validity, I'm going to change. You didn't hear it? Too fast? I'm going to change. I'm going back to school. I'm going back, as a matter of fact, and study philosophy, and maybe minor in theology, or maybe minor in comparative religion, because you're correct. I am bigoted, I am chauvinistic, provincial, parochial, I am narrow-minded, I am a pea-brain, and I'm sick of it, and I'm going to change. You didn't hear it? Are you waiting for a punchline? That was the punchline. But what if they do is what I'm saying. This happens in life that the guy does. You know, he quits all his memberships in these right-wing bigoted organizations. He goes back to school. He buys a foreign car. He ditches his pickup truck. He majors in philosophy. He begins to wander around smoking a pipe. And he can apparently have changed. And if you talk to him now, say, well, are you glad you did this? I am delighted I did it. My intellectual horizons are so much greater now, I cannot believe I lived under those limited intellectual conditions. You don't hear that? It's not right or wrong. It's no attack on people having hobbies. But that does not change the way in which any human intellect anywhere on this planet thinks. You just simply move from one room to another. As long as you are at the center, which I have suggested this before, but I suggest it again, notice that all religions, even outside institutionalized religions, in the areas of humanistic philosophy and etc., just being a sophisticated person, there has been this energy flow that comes out verbally in humanity for eons. Really? Yes. That in some ways seems to be pushing the position that's waving the banner of humility. Or that be under the guise, under the vexillium that God wants us to be humble, or else it's tacky not to be humble. Why is that? What's going on again? My good old question. Twee. To what end are things arranged? I'm still assuming all of you can get past the point of institutional and corporate mythology and worried that the gods in some way made us, some gods, some forces outside a system made us, and then turn around and went, well, there's a bunch of pushy little mothers, you know. And then you sit down and worried, by the way, I wish you people would calm down and, you know, have a little humility about you. I'm just assuming that somebody somewhere, here on tape at some time, is past intellectual kindergarten. That is no longer the case. But notice, even atheists, to take an extreme 3D opposite kind of example in the ordinary world, even atheists will say that it's unbecoming for a person not to have a certain degree of humility. It's just accepted. It is in the wiring system of humanity that there is something extremely, if not religious, attractive, civilized, profitable, to be humble. But what the hell does it mean? To what end? What is this going on? I'm giving you a suggestion. I don't think I'm going into it now, but I could go back and start doing a kind of subversive history lesson and point out that what seems to be the march of progress in humanity, from several views I have done in the past, but I could give you another one that would be a kind of quantum wherein there were a small group of people, it's not looked at this way, but suddenly got very unhumble. Not that they were necessarily noticed as being humble to begin with, but they suddenly did something that would have been, if I could jump back in history and take their milieu at the time and say, have you ever seen a greater example of people not being humble? And all the decent people went, you're right. And yet it appeared to be some amount of great progress, but what I would say if I was going back and do this, I'd be suggesting to you, is that there were a group of people, that is, life was doing at a time that there was a group of people that was extracting themselves in their own nervous system from them being the center of a local reality, which within any one lifetime is simply a replay. You're dealing with reruns over and over and over and over. Everybody should know that by now, as you're supposed to. If there's going to be any change, then amongst other things I could say, the reality behind the idea of humble, you can't be. But it's not external. It's not a matter of being pushy, as you should know. It's got nothing to do with any sort of external. It's got nothing to do with anybody else's perception of what's going on. But the if you want an example, if anybody is still worried about thinking backwards, the opposite, or thinking backwards, not the opposite, but my thinking backwards of being humble would be able to think. Compared to whatever it is you're thinking now. It would be a continual thinking. It would be a thinking beyond the point that you are required to think right now. In other words, intelligent. More intelligent than you are would be thinking backwards to humility. Humility is living the same life, day by day, minute by minute. How about one more? How about an aside? Looks like it's a breather. Still having to do with think sideways. I'm just going to pull out an example that really has no possible validity probably in somebody's lifetime, but at least everybody is now media soaked enough that you'll hear the example. It's the first one that strikes me, and I like it already. What if you were such a person? You wouldn't even have to be famous nowadays. You're such a person that something happened around your workplace, let us say, and a TV station shows up. Maybe the business that you've been laboring for turns out to be some sort of fraud, or the owners are in serious legal straits, and you're the first person they can get their hands on, and they want to do an interview. Now let's say for whatever reason you don't want to do an interview. You got no intention of ever doing an interview. Now what do people ordinarily do? Now, all of you have seen 60 Minutes enough. I know that all of you can't watch PBS all the time, so go ahead and admit that sometimes you turn on the commercials channel. Or your local news. They find out that some guy here, some company, the guy calls himself Dr. So-and-so, Professor so-and-so, says he's a minister in his spare time, and it turns out they've been pouring dioxin into the river. And they want, we want an interview. And he said, get away from me, I don't do interviews. And they follow the man around, and 2 or 3 days later, on the nightly news, they try to lay in the bushes for him at his home. And he tries to punch out a cameraman and all that. I guess that's an extreme enough example for me to go ahead with this. Now forget the limits of that actual physical, material scenario. But a thinking sideways, in this case it almost began to be living sideways, but at least thinking and talking sideways, why would you confront the kind of forces that life has already sent your way? Not to you personally. And then we're back to the matter of humility. The forces are not singling you out for some kind of great test. Sorry. You have not been selected as some kind of crucible to see how much humanity can put up with now since Job died. No matter where you are, remember this, you're somewhere. No matter where you are, you're in traffic. But at any rate, let us say that you are there, and now take this allegorically beyond the actual level. If somebody had any kind of understanding about how life worked, and if they were trying to pursue thinking sideways, and they said, aren't you so-and-so? We want an interview with you. Why say, no, I don't do interviews. I don't mean it's the end of the world, but that's not going to stop that energy necessarily. It's very likely that they're going to come after you later. I'll repeat again. Try to do it simultaneously. I'm talking a kind of example that happens every day nowadays, but you do understand that the example is not it. So think about them both. Why would you do that? The way to, if you were trying to think sideways, if you were trying to not only extract you from the center of what you're thinking so that you could think differently, but let's say in this case, you would actually have to get these bastards off your back and out of your bushes. As they say, we'd like to do an interview with you about this terrible thing about you poisoning the environment, and that they say that you're one of the worst people that's probably lived around this precinct in years. Go, well, all right. Give me your private number. Here, write on a card. Give me your private number where I can get back in touch. I'm writing down. So, all right. Now you got a beeper or something? This is it. Yeah. All right. And leave. Because you got really good. I'll repeat again. You could actually do this in real life, but that's not the point. That is material life. What if they got really hip? And you never did call, which I assume you catch on. In my example, you'd never call. You don't even have to say you will call. You just take it and you kind of shake it like, now I got your now this is your private number. This is where you can be reached. Because you're the first one who asked me for an interview now. So after a day or so, they figure out you're not going to call. And they jump you again. You could even do this. Well, all right. You want to do the interview now? Okay. The courtyard out here, let's say it's your business over at some office park. So there's a courtyard out there. My office is already locked up for the day, and it's a shambles anyway. There's a little courtyard out there, and there's a fountain. I'm not telling your business, but I guess it'd be a good thing. And I'll just meet you around there. Go through that door, and then go through the door and shut it and lock them out there, and then leave. Now, the point of all this, in the same way, is instead of saying I hate opera, is to go through this whole thing about I do not believe that opera would get its just appreciation based on my little experience and knowledge. That it's not to protect opera. It's not to protect you. It's to extract you from the general flow of traffic. In this case, it is not simply to extract you if this did take place literally, of someone trying to do an unwanted interview with you. But if it did, you do not jump out in traffic if you are a revolutionist and holler, all right, stop. Now, you're wired up to do so. Everybody does. And all your life you have. Of course, by traffic, I mean somebody says, those that would try to pass themselves off as sophisticated and cannot see the inherent beauty of the works of Mozart, or Bizet, Vivaldi, is an idiot. And you think, wait a minute, I don't like that kind of crap, and I'm not an idiot. You might as well jump out in front of an 18-wheeler. Well, imagining that you heard the 18-wheeler as the wheels are whipping on the pavement, it sounded like you, it was going, Floyd's a jerk, Floyd's a jerk, Floyd's a jerk. And assume your name's Floyd, and you suddenly think, wait a minute, I don't have to put up with this stuff. And you jump out and you say, wait. Not that you're dumb, you're supposed to. The more you jump out and kill yourself, it becomes habit forming. The more, every time you do it, you want to do it more. You don't think about it, because remember, we were discussing that last time we taped. It's not that people ordinarily are going to get involved some way accidentally, or that in some way that we could arrange these tapes to brainwash and take over mind control over people, so that they would suddenly want to think more than they have to. Hell, forget it. People don't even want to think as much as they have to now. They're not going to think anymore. It's just not the way things are arranged. The more you think just what you have to, it is in a sense habit forming. It's not the kind of habits that people can break. They're not supposed to break it. But that is what I meant by the little silly metaphor of jumping out in traffic, because that's what you're doing when someone says, well, here, have some broccoli. You go, I don't like broccoli. How much more do I have to go? We got 10 minutes. You want me to just keep on with this until some of you, maybe just through repetition, I'll make some of you go, all right, I'll trust you. I'll think about it, because you must mean something. To say, hey, I don't like broccoli. Are we being concerned over you not liking broccoli? Are we being concerned over what broccoli feels and thinks? Are we concerned about the vegetable world? Are we concerned that, well, the great gods made everything, including little broccoli? We shouldn't pick on broccoli any more than we should pick on people that have a different religion, or people that wear a different style of shoes than I do. No! But all of that is a continual reaffirmation that you enjoy committing suicide. It is you staying within the same flow over and over. It is a local reality. It is sequential thought that cannot be moved. If you give your position away, I'll say it again, to nobody else, that's not the point. It is not that me talking at times about this being a revolution, as you should know. Could I start getting a dime for every time I say, as you should know? A nickel, maybe. Would you everybody send me a nickel every time I say it? And send me a nickel every time you think about it without me saying it. Giving your position away is literally, to someone attempting to think more than they have to, is a form of suicide. I know it sounds metaphorical, but it is a form of suicide every time you continue to identify a position. When you say, well, I hate broccoli. Who knows? Everybody hates broccoli. Who cares? You should care that you said that. You should care that the extent of your thinking is that you're staying around and the conversation gets to broccoli. And other people are talking about the way that they like, especially the California, the nouveau cuisine, the way that they fix broccoli out there. And you're thinking, well, you pretentious bastards. Broccoli is a plague upon the face of mankind. Where do they come off with this crap? California and U.S., Jesus, give me a break. That's suicide. Not morally, not spiritually, not any way. It is subversive suicide because you're establishing a position. Of course, if you want it better, you are adopting a position already established for you by life. And you can say, so I hate broccoli. I don't care what you say, I hate broccoli. Well, let's see. If you tried to miss the point any better, God, you'd deserve a medal. If you got a known position, if you give yourself away, there's no way to move. You can't see anything else. There is no position from which you can reconnoiter. Because from the position that you're seeing from now, you've already seen all you're going to see. It's not going to change. And part of the thing about having a correct position to reconnoiter is it's got to be a position that you can take in information, but you don't give out any about yourself. So you already forgot that. It's only been several years. You do not have a position of proper reconnoitering. You just can't do it if you're somewhere that those about or on whom you're attempting to reconnoiter can look around and say, hey, Hubert, look up there. There's a guy trying to reconnoiter on us up there in the weeds. Look at him. Thinks he's hiding, but hell, I see him. Of course they see you because you're hollering such things as, I hate broccoli. Plus, hey, I'm not up here. I'm not up here. And even if I am, I'm not doing what you think I am. I'm not looking at you people. I don't care what you're doing. You cannot take in the information you need if you're giving out the information that life needs for you to give out. You do not have a position to reconnoiter new information if you're giving out old information about you. And the old information about you is what? All right, I hate opera, I hate broccoli. I hate psychoanalysis, I hate people that like psychoanalysis. I hate people that are pretentious. I hate people that even bring up California in light of some kind of faddish something or other. I hate people that want to make you feel bad about hating other people. You can forget any idea of reconnoitering. You can forget any idea of any new information. You can forget any idea that, all right, in some way, I will have somehow, a thought. Someday I'm going to learn how to have so much fun in my own brain that it'll be a shame. That if they find out about it, they'll call it a whole new level of immorality, perversion. Well, I'll just be blunt with you. No, you won't. That was the closest you'll ever come. Might I suggest, in the waning minutes, I didn't know Wayne was here. If you would just consider that I went to the trouble to say literally. It's not to make people, they shouldn't even notice it because you can do it thought-wise. But you should not be saying something that publicly identifies a position. And the circumstances may not be such at every moment that instead of saying, well, I don't like opera, that you went through this. Well, I feel as though opera, because you should be able to tell that if you started that under certain conditions, it might be the people that suddenly everybody looks off like, well, what time is it? You know, the way things were arranged right then in life, nobody cared that much. You're just supposed to say, I hate opera. Or you're just supposed to say, me too. Or, hey, could we have another round over here on me? That as soon as you started, well, I feel as though opera may not get its just appreciation. So you do not always have to do that. That's why I said that the suggested profit is if you would think about it. What might make someone titter to hear about it? Why does it seem to have any effect in some kind of perverse way to even think about doing it? What could be the possible purpose if it has nothing to do with some sort of ersatz humility? Forget that. Real humility, where the hell that is. Why should we deal in fake humility when you can have the real thing, right? So you already forgot what I tried to get you to see was a synonym for humility. It's stupidity. Why have fake stupidity? When you can have the real thing. See, you look like you're posing for a stupid coin. That's one way to be sure to get your likeness is to probably speak out forcefully. I personally do not approve of stupidity in others. And I have darn little tolerance for it in me. And that's what I think. And you may quote me on that, but not now. Any attack that you undertook, which of course would be a secret internal attack and not criticism, and it would not be an attack of opposites, but any attack you would do, that you would undertake, has got to be a surprise attack. You can't attack what you think. You can't attack what you do. You cannot attack what you think you feel from any known position, because you know, I hate to put it this way, where you're coming from. And I didn't mean that in the vernacular as it's used. But you know what your position is. And there is no way to attack yourself and say, all right, I've had it. I've told you I am sick of smoking 4 packs a day. Starting tomorrow, or at least next week, we're going to cut down to 2. You hear me? I'm talking to you, boy. The boy in you goes, right, yeah. I got the shivers. There is no such thing as an attack unless it is a surprise attack. And if it comes from somewhere that you already know a position, it is not a surprise attack. It is no attack. It is dancing with yourself. Which, if that's the best you can do, it's cheaper than a subscription to Playboy or Playgirl. We're out of time, and probably not, if you'll forgive me, a moment too soon. Or a moment too late.